Turn off your lights. Make sure your doors and windows are locked. Things are about to get spooky. The Man on the Bus by Sarah. The story takes place from when I was 15 to 18. I used to take the public bus to go to school and wherever I wanted to go since it was cheap and my parents worked a lot. I recalled this older man on the bus when I was 15. He wasn't super close to me, but he was standing, holding the pole on the bus, looking in my direction. He wasn't super dirty or stood out because of how creepy he was, but just that he was looking at me, and I swore I had seen him before. I did take the same bus, and most people did, so I just told myself that as I continued my way to school. I started to notice him after that. I knew it was because I noticed him that one time, but I realized he was always on the bus, always facing me in some way. It was either a seat that faced my way, standing to do so, and that just started to creep me out. I started to notice him on the other buses I took. Once in a while, I'd be on ones to leave the mall or head back to hanging out with my friends. I realized later is when I posted something on my social medias. When I was 18, my last week of high school, that's when it all came to a head. I decided I needed to walk, stressed out from school and some drama in my friends group. I decided to head down to the park near my house and sit on the swings as I think over some stuff. As I was walking, I felt like I was being watched. I turned off the music I was listening to in my headphones and started to listen around myself. There it was, footsteps behind me. They were keeping pace with mine. Each step I took, they took. I stopped to pretend to be looking for something in my pockets, and they stopped as well. That's when I looked behind me. There he was, this man from the bus, looking intensely at me. I screamed and took off. He followed behind me. There was a gas station that normally had a ton of people in it this time of day. I decided to run that way. I have never ran so hard in my life. My lungs started to burn as my legs did the same. I swore I could feel his hands reaching for me, trying to grab me as I ran. The second I got close to that gas station, I heard his footsteps fade away. I ran into the store and collapsed next to the drinks. One of the other people inside asked if I was okay, which I tried hard to say something, but I was so out of breath and I shook my head. She brought me over a glass of water and talked to one of the employees. After some time, I got my breath back and told the other customer and employee what had just happened. They helped me get a hold of my dad, who came and picked me up as the other two people waited with me. I'm very grateful for them helping me figure out what I needed to do. I was just so scared I couldn't really think. My dad drove me to and from school for the rest of the year, so for a week, and since I went to college in another state, I left that stalker behind as well. I never have seen him since. Man on the bus who stalked me for years. Let's not meet again. What if every night when you go to sleep, your brain shuts down your consciousness completely, ending your existence only to reboot a perfect copy in the morning? The you from yesterday is dead, tomorrow you will be dead, and a perfect copy of you will be thinking this is a silly theory, because they can perfectly remember reading this today, and they believe their you still there. How My Friend and I Were Stalked for Years and Nearly Kidnapped by Temporary Paella 194. First part of the story got delayed, so I'm going to shorten it. Basically, at summer camp, me and my friends started to attend in 2019 does surveys every Sunday based on the topics we'll be discussing. so we get public speaking and a more generalized opinion from others in the area. Me and my friend teamed up with 2 counselors and hit the town. Our last stop was a Walmart, and we talked to a bunch of different people. The most memorable was the second to last, an older man that asked us for our names and all about us after he finished answering our questions. At the time, we were both 13 and hardly had any concept of stranger danger, so we gladly answered about ourselves. Anyway, a few days later, an account popped up on our friend's request called Ed Pascus. The account liked a bunch of our old posts, commented a bunch of fire and rose emojis, and called us hot and sexy on our posts. It got to the point where they started to send us inappropriate pics. So, me and my friend ended up blocking the account. Only a few days later, the account was permanently deleted. It didn't show up on our searches for it. That's why we thought it was the end of it. It was not. When we finally got back to school in August, we basically forgot the event altogether. Yet again, this time on both of our Facebook accounts, we got a notice from someone named Ed Parsons, wanting to be our friend. Immediately blocked that account again, but not before they had already commented lewd things on my baby pictures. Comments on how pretty my baby blonde hair was, how I looked good in short dresses, things like that. But after that, we both talked to our parents about the situation, and other than keeping our account private, there wasn't much else we could really do. The cops shrugged and said just take the app down completely, but hey, we're teens. Of course we didn't do that. Over the years, till around the end of 2021, this man kept sending friend requests from different accounts with similar variations of their name, which was a bit stupid, but whatever. Though, at the beginning of 2022, this is where it starts getting really creepy. Accounts with the names and pictures of our friends started showing up in our notifications, so obviously we added them thinking it was our friends. We were wrong. Almost immediately, most of our posts had likes or comments on them from this account, and then there'd be multiple DMs of inappropriate pics to both of us. We had blocked the account again. This became a reoccurring cycle. Account with friend info, pictures, multiple friends who would get hacked, stolen, duplicated, etc., just so they could friend us again and again without us worrying too much about it. Finally, it got to the point where we stopped adding people from our school at all, even friends. The final time this happened was in the summer of 2022. The swarm of fake accounts had stopped roughly 2 months prior, and seeing as this friend request looked legit by a school friend, I decided to try it out. My friend didn't, she was still wary, but I decided to give it a shot. The compromise was to fully delete our social and get new ones if this account turned out to be the same. I was definitely a stupid 17-year-old, but try not to judge me too harshly. But this account didn't spam our pictures, didn't DM us inappropriate pictures, just interacted with us like any normal school kid would. A little here, a little on our new posts, a little on our story posts, never commenting on our posts. So, finally, we thought it was over. Wrong! Strange things started to happen and became more of an intentional thing than a coincidence. I would post a picture of me and my friend at the park. A couple minutes later, a white truck would pull up in the lot. Eerily close to my car, driver's side door, but we tried not to think too much of it. There were still a few spaces over. Me and my friend were in the swings, basically a straight line of sight of the parking lot. The truck lights remained on, pointing at us for a long time. It got to the point that me and my friend finally started getting worried and anxious, so we hopped off from the swings and decided to take laps around the park instead. The car was far too close to mine for us to be comfortable chancing getting into it at the time. Mind you, it was about 10 p.m. at night, and we were the only ones there. We waited and roamed the park for nearly an hour before the truck finally drove away. That's when we raced to my car and I drove home, looked behind me frequently just in case. This happened in early June, and it kept happening. I didn't really notice it, thought it was a one-off occurrence. It never dawned on my head that it happened after I posted pictures and said where I was with my friends. But I started to see a white truck just about everywhere I posted about, even one that would wait outside my high school when I posted a story about my walk to my mom's store only a mile from our school. Again, young and dumb, I didn't think the worst of it. I thought it was a parent waiting for a kid, plus there's a bunch of people that own all kinds of variations of white trucks in my town. So I never put much worry into seeing them all the time. My friend never mentioned any white truck, and if we were together, we rarely saw any of them. But I started to get nervous of them after one time I was walking to my mom's store. I decided to take a glance at the driver of the truck that sat near the car line every day after school. It was the same, if not a bit older, man from our Walmart survey trip of 2019. It was bizarre, definitely. We were never expecting to see him again, especially since we met him in a few towns over from our own. Yet, lo and behold, he's right there. That's when I walked, probably ran actually, to my mom's store. This kept happening, and I finally knew I was being stalked after seeing him that first time because I saw him everywhere on foot. Anyway, this is getting long, so I'll fast forward to the last bit that happened on the last day of our shared summer camp in late July 2023. At this point, I was still 17, and since I was older than most of the new campers, I might as well have been considered a staff member. I drove kids to camp and home every night, and they paid me for the gas money, so it was cool doing it. It didn't bother me since they were in the same town as me, and there were others further away that counselors typically drove home. This day, I posted all the last day campfire pictures right before I left so I could try and save my phone that was suffering from glitches, lack of data, and didn't let me communicate/call with others because my storage was too full. So I photo dumped a bunch of stuff, and it didn't fix the problem. My phone was essentially broken in all but name. It hardly worked, and I bought my current phone after this occurrence. On top of this, one of the older campers that had visited on the last day, 19 male, didn't have a phone either, but he was also in the car with me. In the back seat, I had 3 campers. One didn't have a phone either, and the other 2 were dead. One was charging theirs in my carport, but didn't think much of it, just turned on the radio full blast and gunned it back home. As I pulled off the back roads of our camp up to the intersection, the light turned green and went forward. In the lane next to us was a white truck that kept turning its brights on and off. It was a bit weird, so I sped up, but I didn't think much of it. Side note, my best friend, let's call her Anne for this, has a baby. Anne had her kid at 16, so at this point her kid was nearly a year old. Still very fussy in car rides and such. This became important later because Anne was there for the last day of camp too. She left right before we did when her baby became cranky. Eventually, I didn't see the white truck behind me anymore, and I slowed down a bit. It was nearly 9:30 p.m. at this point, late enough for the highway between our towns to be essentially empty. I have this back road that is a bit curvy that leads close to my house and directly to a rich neighborhood. It's the street I typically take to get back to my house from camp if I have no one to take home, and everyone that was a regular in my car called it the detour. It was quite pretty, with a bunch of full evergreen trees and wildlife. The kids, Not really kids, but they acted like it. 13 female, 15 male, 15 male. In the back were begging me to go to the detour, since it was the last day of camp. So I caved in and hit on my blinker, turning right onto the back road. Now, listen, I'm not the safest person out there, don't judge me. I'm still basically a kid too, but all the ones in the back love to hang out with windows on the back roads, so I let them stick their heads out of the sunroof, still on the windowsill while holding the bars on top of my car. I went slow, under 10 miles per hour, just so they could do it and not worry about them getting hurt. I mean, there was no one on the back roads. Cops never camp out on these streets, and I was going under the speed limit by like 20. There wasn't really any harm in letting them stick out the windows. Eventually, I let them bully me into taking them around the rich neighborhood that had the cool water fountains and covered bridges on their streets. Apparently, one of the covered bridges caved in, so we had to go around on a super narrow street right next to a large drainage ditch at least 15 to 20 feet deep. As we were going around it, a car comes up behind me. I assumed it was one of the people who lived in the neighborhood, so I was going to speed up to let them get to their house. Finally, we came to a four-way of the rich people's street. Straight forward was a dead end, which is what I originally was going to do. To the left was a broken covered bridge, and to the right was a back around that would take us back to the beginning of the street. But it has no houses / lights back there because the neighborhood is still being built. But let's call him Jake, 19 male, told me to go right. Mind you, one of the campers was sticking their body out of the skylight from the back seat, so I couldn't see out my rearview mirror. I didn't really want to, but I trusted his instincts and turned right. As soon as I did, I started to hear honking behind me. I was a bit startled, and so were the kids in the back seat. I glanced out my side view mirror, but I couldn't see anything past the bright LED lights. I thought it was just because I took so long, so I sped up a bit after I turned right. There was a hook at the end of the hill on the back street, and it makes you tug the steering wheel pretty hard to stay on the road, especially in the dark. The car behind me turned right too. They started flashing their LED brights, honking loudly, and had roll-down windows screaming at us. They kept trying to get in the lane next to us and bump into my car to run us off the road. That is when I knew this was serious. Instantly, I started to scream at the kids in the back seat to sit down, buckle up, and roll up their windows. They barely managed to do that by the time I hit the bender at the end of the hill really hard and gunned it off the street. Driving around the drainage ditch with little problem. I'd done it multiple times. There was no phone in the car to call anyone, least of all the police, so I just ended up speeding down the back streets as the car chased me, trying to run me off the road multiple times. When we came upon the sharp corners, they slowed down. That told me they didn't know this area well, which I used to my advantage. As I was approaching a stop sign for me to go left or right, my house was to the right, so left it was. I yelled at Jake to check my right because I'm not stopping for the sign. I speed past it, the car. This is about the time I noticed that it was a fucking white truck. Tried to hit my bumper again, and I swerved into someone's yard. Grass was damaged the next day when I drove past it. I booked it down the street, hitting every turn as fast as possible, and eventually I thought I lost the truck. I sped past my high school and onto the highway again, where we got off in the first place. I didn't see the truck behind us, and we were all still freaked out. I took a right to go on to another main way and passed by a closed gas station on the way. Very important in a moment. I stopped at a gas station and handed the kids in the back some cash for them to get themselves a drink and a snack to help them calm down. None of them were crying, thank God, the adrenaline junkies they are. They thought it was more exciting than anything. I told Jake to go watch them in the store and make sure they didn't do anything stupid while I filled up the gas tank. We waited at the gas station for about 20 minutes before I went back onto the road to take them home, just in case. I asked them if they had saw the car at all while they were hanging out the window, and only one of them said they thought they did, but the truck's lights were off. It was the same truck from a town or so over from the intersection in front of the back road to our camp. They followed us for nearly 25 minutes. After I dropped all of them off, I was still a bit shaky and decided to try to see if my phone would call someone that I could talk to about what happened. The only contact that would load was Anne, since she was the last person I had talked to on the phone. With a stroke of luck, my phone actually let me call. She picked up, but all I could hear from her side of the line was her crying. Obviously panicking, I asked her what was wrong, and lo and behold, she shared a story eerily similar to what just happened to me. Apparently Anne's baby started crying so loud she could barely focus on the road, so she pulled into the closed gas station I mentioned earlier, right outside our high school, and I sped past. She was giving her kid their bottle when a white truck pulled into the lot. Immediately she was weary because it was closed, and she was right. Less than 30 seconds later, this truck parked horizontally in front of Anne's car to block her in. She immediately started her car again, locked her doors, and pulled off over the grass curb, blocking her from the street. She was not chancing her baby at all. Anne told me the only thing she remembered about the man was that we saw him years ago at the Walmart. His eyes stared at her like she was just a piece of meat for him to have. As she raced home, the truck caught up to her. She turned onto her back road, running out of gas, and the truck started to flash its lights, honk, run her off the road the entire time. But a couple streets before hers, a little red car pulled out in front of her and started to brake check her as the white truck tried to hit her from behind. It was a mess. She took a chance, sped up, and swung onto the streets to at least lose the red car. The truck booked it after her. Apparently, both of her older brothers were waiting outside for her with some of her friends to help her bring in stuff for her baby. Upon seeing this, as she pulled into the driveway, the white truck sped off. If her brothers weren't outside, that would have been a different story. But anyway, long story short, the truck that followed me all the way back had an accomplice in a red car that followed my friend Anne. When they couldn't catch me, they went for her. Both me and Jake suspected that because I didn't go into the dead end where the man could cut me off, that's probably why it suddenly got violent so quickly. Edit. I never mentioned what happened after this, but the man in the white truck and the other in the little red car were found a town over when there was footage taken of them attempting to kidnap a 7-year-old off a porch and being attacked by their dog. Along with this, we found that there had been several sightings of a white truck around our town, following others doing similar things day after it first happened to us, following cars that had similar descriptions to my friends and I's cars. Our reports were officially filed after we saw the information of the car on Facebook, along with the identity of the man that had been stalking us for years. It took years to get rid of them, but now we don't have to worry about the men anymore. As my peers congratulated me for spending the night in the morgue, I gave them advice to just sing in front of the giant mirror as a distraction if they're ever afraid. I froze in horror as they replied, "What mirror?" Stalker by Demonic Dog 7352. So me and my girlfriend were out smoking at like 4 or 5. It was dark, Alaska winters, and we were just talking on a playground set across the road in a neighborhood. We're lighting, and all of a sudden we see a guy walking down the road from the right. Keep in mind that he came from the right and not the left. So we see him and didn't take it seriously, and he walked, and then he thinks about walking into the playground, and so he starts thinking if he should or not, so he goes back to where he came from, but instead went into the woods that were next to us and watched us. We started panicking and decided to get up and leave. He quickly runs out of the woods and keeps up with us and starts following us down the road. He came from up the road, so it was odd and a red flag. My girlfriend still wanted to go home, so we almost took a shortcut to her house. But her house was maybe 3 or 2 blocks away, so we decided to walk to McDonald's because it was closer and safest. We look back and we're almost there, and he stops following us. Never again. I pointed the gun right between my wife's eyes as she slept, closed my eyes, and squeezed the trigger. I couldn't tell her that I had just spoken to the president of our son's college, letting us know that he had committed suicide in his dorm room. And with that, our time together is coming to an end. As always, I'd like to thank the writers who let me read their stories this evening. We had 3 very creepy stalker stories, starting with one followed for years on transit to not even realize it right away. Who knows how long that, creepy guy was watching them. And then a good story on why you shouldn't give out your personal information to strangers. Stranger danger is very important. And with the internet being how it is now, it's very easy to track down people, and that's just scary. I'm super happy that apparently the 2 guys got caught. It makes me wonder if there was a red car also following them, but they never put it together because, a white truck is a dime a dozen, but so are some of the red cars too. So it just makes me curious whether they would remember also a red vehicle following them a lot too, or if maybe that person only joined that one day when they were going to strike. I'm very happy both of them got away and that poor baby was also safe. They sounded very scary, to be seen as nothing but a piece of meat, to be just an object for them. That just horrifying. And then the guy who just kind of appeared out of nowhere and started stalking them, and luckily they were smart and went to a more public place. It's always a good idea to either go where other people will be witnessing you, or if you can, a cop station as well. Anywhere that you're not alone. As I've said before, if you feel unsafe and a car pulls up in any way, scream, shout, do whatever you have to do to make sure that they don't take you to a second location. It has been proven that if you get taken to a second location, the chance of you surviving are slim, let alone being found. You're not where people are expecting you, basically. If you have a story you'd like me to narrate, like one of the submissions I had tonight, you can send it to me in 3 different ways. I have a website, a subreddit, and an email. All the links are down below in the description box / show notes. If you enjoyed this video, hit that like button and make sure it feels it. If you're new, please subscribe and turn that pretty little bell to all notifications. And of course, I would love a comment. Tell me what you thought, what kind of stories you like in the future, anything like that at all. If you're listening on the podcast instead, if you're able to leave me a review, it'd be greatly appreciated. And Spotify also allows you to leave comments. And wherever you're listening, if you're willing to share these stories with anyone else, it'd be greatly appreciated. If you'd like to help in a more financial way, like my lovely Patreons and members that you can see on screen right now, well, there's links down below for easier find, or I do have PayPal and Buy Me a Coffee and super thanks on YouTube if that's something you're willing to do. None of this is ever expected, just always appreciated, guys. As always, thank you for watching and listening. It always has and always will mean the world to me, guys. Sleep tight and don't let 42 bite.